Thank you. Mr. Pierce, Mr. Gresham, remarks that sang my praises.
Excuse me.
You know, the number of times that I've stood in public space to acknowledge an anointing never happens without me challenging why did folks go through all of this to make a moment like this happen. I'm aware that there's a mission. We have work to do, that we have funds to be raised, and use whatever is at our disposal to meet the challenges of that task. For me, however, it's more than just the fundraiser, or just more than the anointing. It is the validation that comes with it. Not just that which strokes the ego and swells the pride, but there's a price to be paid when you stand up against tyranny, when you stand up against oppression, when you stand up against greed. And the price that you pay sometimes can be cruel. I've watched great men and women, many of whom were mentors, pay a terrible price for the work that they chose to do in caring for other men and other women. I've watched this country crucify truly remarkable human beings whose gift was that they cared deeply enough for those who needed to be cared for ideas and thoughts that were in jeopardy, that should have been ideas and thoughts that thrived. And in my own moment, having these people pause long enough to acknowledge my presence and to acknowledge the work that I do is validation that takes care of all that the opposition throws at you. I saw a picture last night called Chambre. I saw Hollywood 10. I saw a period in which I lived and a mission that cast its shadow on the paths that I was walking. I watched them heap cruelty upon Paul Robeson. I watched Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois held in chains at Foley Square, all because they thought that there was no price too great to pay for pushing the cause of justice to the forefront. I am truly blessed. In a few short months, I will be 90. It has been a life that has been filled with all sorts of incredible moments. Perhaps one of the greatest for me was, in fact, that I had an opportunity to not only meet Paul Robeson, but to have paused long enough in his presence, to be embraced by him and to be encouraged by him. He said to us, a small group of young actors aspiring to become part of the performing art, he said, it's a wonderful thing that you young people have chosen to do. It was at the American Negro Theater in Harlem, in the basement, public library, where some of us, at the end of the Second World War, gathered together to try to find where we belong and what would we do next. We come out of a great war that was about democracy and freedom and end of white supremacy and Hitler and the pure Aryan race. All those things that so many of us stood up for and fought for, only to, at the end of that adventure, to be told when we came back home from the war that all those things that we were fighting for was meant for everyone else but us. Many of us didn't have the right to vote. We couldn't live where we wanted. We couldn't pursue the joys of the world. Were there for the taking by so many others. If you were a person of color, those opportunities did not come easily. And after having fought to end segregation, to end racism, to be told that we could not participate in what America had to offer was a bitter pill. Perhaps more crushing is the fact that those men and some women who returned from that war could not sit at the table of celebration because we were not considered equal. And the rage that struck many of us led us to campaign for the rest of our lives to make sure that America lived up to its promise, lived up to the things that it said it stood for. And it was because of Paul Oakes and Du Bois and remarkable people like Eleanor Roosevelt, who embraced some of us, that helped inspire us to do some of the things that we did and still do. It was Paul Oakes who said artists are the gatekeepers of truth. Artists, civilization's moral compass. Those rather lofty words fell upon the ears of some young black actors in that basement and listening to him. With his voice and his inspiration and his tutoring, led us on a journey that I am forever eternally grateful to him and others having shown us the way. Today, the Central Park 5, Ms. Garcia, we are honored by the gathering. It was an ordinary day that had an extraordinary consequence. Looking at Aisha Scott, television screen, the classroom in Florida, and watching 3 white police officers invade her space in that classroom, and to shackle this little 5-year-old girl. It was a moment that shook me to the core. And my core had been shaken quite often. Many things that I responded to. When I saw Aisha Scott with the terror in her face in that classroom, I decided that there was still an awful lot of work to do that I didn't even realize needed to be done. I thought that the Great War, with the Civil Rights Movement, the Peace Movement, with the movements to end man's inhumanity to man. We covered all that space, only to discover that the enemy did not sleep. He was still up to his mischief, and he was still crucifying people for just wanting to embrace life. When we put the gathering together, it started off as a calling of all the highest profile leaders out of the civil rights movement, those who still endured, and those who came from the peace movement and other movements. We met in Atlanta, and everyone showed up. Electoral politics, social movements, and we spent 3 days in a retreat talking about ideas and expressing feelings. I discovered that the people that I was speaking to had already been in the battle. They had done an awful lot. And I got the sense that they were not quite ready for yet another round. And so I paused for a moment and decided to put my attention to the young. Let them step into the space that demanded filling. And so in Epps, Alabama, we put together a youth movement made up mostly of people who are from street gangs in America. The Bloods, the Crips, Bo Taylor, the young man who opened this evening. His name is Nani Alejandres, a Chicano, Mexican brother, fought in Vietnam, came back, caught up in drugs and caught up in struggle, decided to put his life into the cause of change. And he, along with Bo Taylor and others, were in the midst of creating a peace treaty to stop the bloodshed that was flowing in the streets of Los Angeles and in Northern California. And in reaching out to Nani, he introduced me into a community of activists that reminded me of my youth. And here was Nani Alejandres, willing to put down the gun, willing to reach across the divide. And it was then that the idea for the gathering was born. In that group that he had put together, there was a young woman by the name of Carmen Perez. Her strength and her work as an organizer told me that she would be the perfect candidate to come to New York and to work with me. And good fortune began to come our way. 1199 offered us space. I'd been with 1199 for almost 50 years in that union's struggle. And George Gresham said, come on in, Mr. B. We have space. You can house with us as long as it's necessary. So Carmen came, and she discovered Jules Hoffenberg, and between the two of them, they began to organize around the city. They began to organize up in Sing Sing, where we went with great regularity, and still do, to speak to the inmates and to speak to the prison attendees, a lot of the guards who have to look out for the well-being of the inmates, and to begin to do work that she does, dealing with dismantling the criminal injustice system that we are all too familiar with. I can ramble here forever. Let me just say that I am deeply touched by the work that Carmen and Jules has done. This is all about them taking the time out to put this together. When they first asked me about honoring we had a little moment, but I'm deeply, deeply sensitive to what happens when people with celebrity profile begin to believe the anointing and begin to believe that somehow they are special and that we get these gifts of human kindness because we deserve them. That's not quite the case. I always felt that the reward was in the doing, not in any prizes that were to be given. And it was the love that I feel every day when I walk into 1199, knowing that we're all doing the same work, trying to make the world in which we live a better place. I'm eternally grateful to Robeson and to Dr. Du Bois and to Eleanor Roosevelt, and perhaps young men like Martin Luther King Jr., who's 2 years younger than I, that he first called and asked me to become a part of the cause. I looked at this young man, marveled at his spirit, marveled at his courage. They took him away, but not before he had filled the space with so many who had been touched by his incredible imagination and his strength. All these things have been part of my experience, and I don't really need trinkets or prizes. Every day, running into the people who do the work, who walk the walk, who talk the talk, who make the difference, is more than enough reward for doing something that gives me such a great sense of well-being. I want to thank you again, Carmen. Thank each and every one of you who are here tonight. Most of you are activists giving to our cause, the gathering, and in turn, the gathering has turned around and organized and attracted many activist groups all over the Eastern Coast. They're out west now and Midwest as well. And these young people that have come together to do this work is all the reward I need. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Jules. I want to thank my daughter, Gina. I've often wondered what the subtotal of my life, what will it do to my children? I was not there when I should have been, and I've often bemoaned the fact that perhaps I was not as attentive as I should be, and that what they have missed in that choice was perhaps a presence that might have made life a little bit easier for them. But instead, rather than bemoan and to criticize and to get ticked off on those that absenteeism, they decided to join the cause, to get into it.
I'm fine, man. I'm good. I'm not gonna sleep. I'm good.
I watch so many children who are the victims of and the beneficiaries of parents who are committed to struggle.
Well, no, I'm fine, man. I have
They
something here. I
sometimes
keep
pay a
myself from
terrible
sneezing.
price. But my daughter Gina, joining forces with Carmen and so many others, has given my last time around on this incredible trip, has given me all the reward I need. Her commitment, the depth of her understanding of what needs to be done, to watch her with 1199 and having chosen to be in the arts herself, what she's done as a creative, being, all of it. I just had a hell of a ride. And, perhaps part of the disturbance in all of this is that the ride isn't over. And even more horrible is the fact that the things that have required so much attention, for which we've paid such a great price, trying to make change, still seems to be in need of attention. I don't know when this will all end. I don't know how it's going to end. But those of us who have accepted the challenge of human development, human rights, civil rights, all of it, have made choices that are the better side of the equation. I'm deeply grateful to my comrades, leaders, to the young people, wonderful family, and of course, my wife, Pamela, gets to know every day. Not too long ago, I had a stroke, and didn't expect it. No warning. Just walking along 72nd Street, I went down, and I didn't go out, but I went down. The only thing I missed about the opportunity of that moment was that so many people with goodwill came up and wanted to help. And if I'd had a paper cup, I could have made a fortune. And I still got another chance. Silly. But all the things that have been thrown at me in life has been worth it. Paul Rhodes said, never fail to answer the knock at the door. I never quite understood what he meant by that until I discovered that every time there was a knock at the door and I answered, I was really rewarded by the new experience I just met, the new idea, the new thought, the new person stepped into the space about life, making changes in life. So, I run my mouth much too long. Thank you all very much. Thank you for this. Thank you.
Don't give up the fight. Reach your little self in.